Did anyone even know that Vivo made server racks? Because I sure as hell didn't. I spent a lot of time looking at different server racks. Most were too tall or too deep, and a lot were also too wide. So I knew that I was going to be really limited in my options. And those options were really limited to open frame adjustable racks. And there's only like a handful of companies that make those, and Vivo is one of them. The whole reason I went with a 12U server so that I wouldn't block my window, and then the window could let in as much light as possible since nothing was blocking it anymore. And going with an open frame rack allows there to just generally be better airflow, especially since I plan on putting my gaming computer in it. So that way I don't have to worry about any kind of airflow impedance or it getting too hot while it's baking inside if it were an enclosed server rack. After discovering that Vivo even made these things, I reached out and asked if they'd be willing to send over the Cart SR12U rack, and sure enough they did. So now we can get this set up in the office and we'll have something permanently in here as well.
We are trying to solve two problems here. The first is rack mounting the gaming PC to make space on the desk, and the second is to have more rack space for equipment, but also trying not to completely block the window. Admittedly, the current setup is also pretty ugly, so we definitely need to change that to clean it up a little bit. First, I need to make some space in my lab because it's pretty tight in here, and the more space I have, the easier things will be. Moving the workbench outside of the room will help clear tons of space. Next up, we'll be removing these 4 components and setting them aside for later. Once I get the PDU, patch panel, 10 gigabit switch, and the shelf removed, I can then remove the rack and everything underneath it. When I went to unbox all of the different parts is when I noticed they used 2 boxes, which at first I thought was unnecessary given how each individual piece was wrapped and protected. Well, it turns out having that second box may have been a pro move given how much damage the interior box had received after being shipped. Here are all the screws, nuts, bolts, washers, casters, and all other accessories needed for assembly and usage of the rack. To get the assembly process going, I went ahead and removed everything from its protective bubble wrap, and since none of the individual pieces are labeled for assembly instructions, I figured it would be a good idea to go ahead and group similar pieces together. After doing that, I could then try and figure out how they all might go together, and we would just kind of wing it from there. I decided that it would be best to start assembly with the adjustment crossbars since they were the most recognizable pieces and arguably the easiest to assemble. I knew I wanted the depth of my rack to be fairly shallow, so I chose to make all of the arms 1 and 0 in length, which would give me about 23 inches of depth, which should be perfect, and if not, I could always try 1 and 1 for a little bit more depth if needed in the future. With all my arms the same length, I used the 20 pack of S-B M6 by 12mm screws to lock the crossbars in place. Just so you are aware, you will only need to use 4 screws per adjustment crossbar, leaving you with 4 extra that you will need for the casters later on. However, should you feel like you need more, there are 40 more included with this unit, so feel free to use 8 per crossbar if desired. I laid out all the pieces like so, because this appeared to be the correct orientation needed to assemble things correctly. One thing I want to point out here is that the vertical support bars have a long and short end. The long end will connect to the bottom support bar, and the short end will connect to the upper support bar. Slide the long end of the vertical support bar into the cut of the bottom support bar. Then take the adjustment crossbar and place it behind the vertical support bar. It will hold itself together, giving you time to grab the bolts you will need to join the 3 pieces. Here are the same actions again, but from a different angle. It's very simple to do, although it is a bit awkward to execute. These are the S-A M8 by 20mm bolts you will need to join all of these support bars together. I started hand threading the bolts first before using the included wrench. Once things were snug enough, I then used the hand wrench, but then I quickly found it would be faster and easier to just use a 14mm socket and drill instead. From here, you just need to repeat the steps of assembly, tightening all pieces together by hand. After then, and only after all 4 corners are hand tightened together, go around and secure it all quickly and easily with the drill. With the bottom assembled, the top pieces all just sort of fall into place and can be easily and quickly secured together. I think the most important step here is to get the pieces in place first and tightening the bolts by hand second. Afterwards, once everything's in place, you can use the drill to really fasten everything together super nicely. Now we just need to flip the entire rack so that we can put the casters on as well as the leveling feet. However, I chose not to put the leveling feet on as they won't be necessary for me. We will once again be using these M6 screws and these nuts to secure the casters to the bottom of the frame. Doing so is very straightforward. You will need one screw and a nut to pass through the frame and provide an additional contact point for the casters and the frame. And just like that, we're done. Now I just need to flip this bad boy over and start racking some equipment and we'll be good to go. I can't wait to get my gaming PC mounted in this rack. The entire frame is all steel, which according to Vivo will support up to 1,200 pounds. But this doesn't say if that weight is supported by the casters or the leveling feet. That weight limit could just be from the frame sitting on the floor without casters. Speaking of casters, the 4 casters are 2 inches in size, which gives the overall dimensions of the 12U rack a height of 28.3 inches, 23.5 inches of width, and an adjustable depth from 22 to 40 inches. While I do like the height of this rack, I wish we had the option of something slightly taller, like perhaps a 15, 16, or 18U rack. These heights are great because they keep the room from feeling cramped and give you plenty of storage space. If there was a taller option, I would definitely upgrade to that, just to give myself some breathing room. But for now, it works perfectly fine. And I don't see myself needing to upgrade to the 25U version.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.